Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today, we're exploring the fascinating and honestly sometimes hidden architecture behind how we actually learn languages. Have you ever sat in a language classroom and just wondered, who decided we were going to learn these specific words today? Or why on earth are we doing this particular activity? Well, behind every single lesson you take, there is a blueprint. Today we're using David Noonan's foundational text to figure out how language courses are actually built from the ground up. And we're going to treat the whole process exactly like an architect designing a house. So here's our agenda for today's explainer. Number 1, curriculum versus syllabus. Number 2, the starting points. 3, analyzing learner needs. 4, general versus specific English. And finally, number 5, product versus process. We're going to map out this entire journey using that architect metaphor. So we'll start with the massive big picture of the whole property, that's the curriculum, and then we'll narrow all the way down to the specific building materials, which are the actual products and processes of the syllabus. Let's get started. Section 1. Curriculum versus syllabus. The big picture. First up, we really need to address a major debate right out of the gate, which is separating the overarching master plan of education from the actual actionable blueprint. To do this, we're drawing directly from David Noonan's highly influential 1988 book, Syllabus Design. This text provides a truly brilliant framework that helps language teachers and designers critically assess exactly what they're putting in front of their students. It sets a beautifully academic yet incredibly accessible tone for our whole exploration today. Now, what's really interesting here is how this establishes a strict kind of narrow view of language planning. In the academic literature, there is actually a ton of confusion between the terms curriculum and syllabus. But Noonan, drawing on various experts, clarifies this beautifully for us. The curriculum is the master plan. It's concerned with the who and the how. We're talking general statements about language learning, evaluation, and the role relationships between teachers and learners. The syllabus, on the other hand, is the blueprint. It's much more localized. It is concerned strictly with the what, the actual selection and the grading of the content that goes into the course.
Section 2. The starting points. Surveying the landscape.
So now that we know exactly what a syllabus is, we have to ask a pretty logical question. Before an architect lays the very first brick, where do they even begin to gather their ideas? How do we know what to put into this blueprint? Well, deciding what goes into a syllabus is never just a value-free exercise. It is always heavily influenced by these 3 core perspectives. Are we focusing on an analysis of the language itself, meaning what linguistic elements should be taught? Or are we starting with information about the learner, asking, what does the specific student actually want to do with the language? Or maybe we're driven by beliefs about the learning process, asking what activities actually stimulate language acquisition in the brain. A syllabus designer usually blends these, for sure, but make no mistake, their personal beliefs will ultimately dictate the primary starting point of the entire course.
Section 3. Analyzing learner needs. Consulting the client.
Let's look a bit closer at that second perspective, the learner. Because if we're building a house, we have to consult the client to figure out exactly what they need the new building for, right? In syllabus design, this is called needs analysis. And when consulting our clients, we basically gather 2 very different types of data. First, we have objective data. This is the factual stuff. Age, nationality, home language, it's super easy to collect, but it doesn't give us the whole picture. Just knowing someone is, say, 20 years old and from Spain doesn't really tell us how to build a good course for them. For that, we need subjective data. This reflects the personal perceptions, goals, and priorities of the learner. How do they actually prefer to learn? Do they love studying strict grammar rules, or do they prefer conversational games? Without the subjective data, our blueprint might completely fail the client. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we look beyond just the learner and start analyzing the actual tasks they need to perform out there in the real world. This is known as task analysis. Check out this list of steps from Dick and Carey for making a long-distance phone call. Notice anything kind of funny about it? Yeah, they are completely out of order. I mean, you wouldn't dial the area code before picking up the receiver to hear the dial tone, and you certainly wouldn't ask for the person before you even wrote the number down. This slightly humorous example shows us exactly how incredibly complex real-world skills actually are when you have to break them down into an ordered sequence of behaviors for a learner. Now, if you want to see task and needs analysis taken to its absolute maximum limit, look no further than John Mumby's famous model from 1978.
Mumby basically attempted to mechanistically map out every single possible variable of a learner's situation across these 9 distinct elements. Who is the participant? What is the purpose of domain or the setting? Are they interacting through speaking or writing? What dialect are they using? What's the interpersonal tone or the communicative key that they need to master? It is incredibly thorough, absolutely, but it's also faced some heavy criticism for being way too mechanistic and focusing a bit too much on individual analysis, which, let's be honest, can be really tough to actually implement in a packed classroom.
Section 4. General versus specific English. Defining the function. That brings us to the next major decision in our blueprint, defining the function of the building itself. Are we building a general-purpose family home, or are we building a highly specialized facility, like a chemistry lab? So, the crucial point here is this massive ongoing debate in language teaching. Do we teach general-purpose English? You know, the everyday survival language needed to grab food, make friends, and find our way around town. Or do we teach English for specific purposes, carving language up into these super niche universes like English for motor mechanics or English for biological science? Critics of specific English argue that language really shouldn't be chopped up into discrete mini-universes, and that at the end of the day, everyone just needs a common core of language. But advocates for specific English argue that different domains absolutely require vastly different communication skills to be successful. The linguist H.G. Widdowson captures this stark contrast perfectly. He writes, ESP is essentially a training operation which seeks to provide learners with a restricted competence. GP, on the other hand, is essentially an educational operation. Just think about that for a second. We are directly contrasting training someone for a highly specific, restricted task, like naming parts of a car engine, versus educating them to handle completely undefined, unpredictable eventualities in the future. It's a profound philosophical choice for a syllabus designer to make.
Section 5. Product versus process. Selecting the materials.
All right, we've reached the final section of our agenda. We know our overall plan, we've surveyed the landscape, we've consulted the client. Now it's time to select the actual building materials for our syllabus. Traditionally, language has been taught as a product. The linguist D.A. Wilkins described this as a synthetic language teaching strategy. In a synthetic syllabus, language is treated as an end product that gets broken down into discrete little units, usually grammar rules or lists of vocabulary. These parts are then taught separately, step by step, block by block, rule by rule, until the whole structure of the language is gradually accumulated by the student over time. Let's look at how this builds across different elements of a syllabus. This table brilliantly clarifies the pretty dense theory between a product and a process. If your syllabus element is grammatical structures, that is a product orientation referenced entirely on the language itself. But look down at classroom drilling. That is a process. It's an action directed toward an end. And look at communicating with a speaker. That is also a process. And this brings us directly into one of the most important concepts we're covering today, the task-based syllabus. I want to explain this fully because it's a real game changer. Instead of teaching language as an accumulated product, like a pile of grammar rules you just memorize, a task-based syllabus organizes lessons around meaning-focused tasks. All of its elements revolve around doing things. Think of a pedagogical task like working with a partner to plan a train itinerary using a complicated timetable. The focus isn't on repeating a verb conjugation. The focus is on achieving a real-world goal. It's highly detailed. You need to negotiate meaning, ask for clarification, and confirm details, all in the target language. The syllabus designer must decide, are we just listing end products, or are we mapping out these real-world learning processes?
But here is exactly where the traditional blueprint starts to show some serious cracks. In recent years, researchers in second language acquisition, or SLA, have brought up a massive tension. They ask the Altoid dilemma. Why do learners at a particular stage fail to learn certain grammatical items which have been explicitly and often repeatedly taught to them? Think about it. If the synthetic product-oriented syllabus was perfect, surely teaching a rule would equal learning a rule. But it doesn't. And this failure is exactly why the task-based syllabus became so revolutionary. Let's look at the points in detail. Instead of drilling rules that students just forget the minute they leave the room, a task-based approach completely immerses learners in problem solving. By focusing on meaning and successful task completion, like actually booking a hotel room in a role play or resolving a tricky scheduling conflict with a colleague, learners acquire the grammar naturally. It happens as a byproduct of the process of communicating rather than them struggling to memorize it as some disconnected product. The elements of the task-based syllabus are all about the real world. The objective is task completion, the method is communication, and the result is authentic language acquisition.
Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought. Does teaching grammar rule by rule actually result in learning? Or do we need to fully embrace the task-based blueprint? where mastering a real-world process actually becomes the ultimate goal of the classroom. It's a question that challenges the very foundation of traditional education. Thank you so much for joining me on this Explainer, Focused Learners. I really hope this deep dive into David Noonan's work leaves you eager to question your own assumptions the very next time you sit down in a classroom. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.